I thought it might be interesting to share a little bit about how I came to my understanding of the runes, because I'm aware that my understanding of the runes is different from many people's, not least because I use the Younger Futhark. So basically, in the mid to late 90s, I was really involved in Druidry in the UK, and I was very happy. But my husband at the time, my first husband, was involved in a Nordic martial arts, which had a wisdom tradition to it. I was quite bored by it. I thought it was very much boys playing with sticks. It did not interest me at all until I started to realise that there was some mythology and wisdom behind it as well. Then basically one of the chaps that was involved in teaching this tradition said to people in general, I'm living on Orkney, if anyone wants to come and pitch a tent, you're welcome to come and stay in my garden. Well, my first husband and I had already been to Orkney. We absolutely loved it, and we both agreed it would be a great free holiday. This was in the summer of 1999, and I didn't realise it was the holiday that would change my life. I kind of left my husband and Sean to it. They did a lot of fighting with sticks, and I really enjoyed my time staying on Sanday, one of the smaller Orkney Isles. If you don't know where Orkney is, then think of the top of Scotland and then just think further north. It's between Scotland and the Shetlands, basically. At the very end of the holiday, Sean had a chat with me, and he said that if I was interested in learning the shamanic side of Starve, which was the wisdom tradition, then he was happy to teach me. And it was one of those really weird moments where I said yes without really registering I'd said yes. This was in the summer of 99, so Christmas of 99 saw me in a van driving to the north of Scotland, taking a ferry and moving to Sanday in the Orkney Isles. And that's where I learned about the runes. Now, it was a strange way to learn, but I'm very, very grateful I learned this way, because I didn't have any books on the runes. I wasn't, up to this point, I hadn't really been interested in them. And the internet is not what it is today. It was much more chat rooms. It really wasn't the depth of information, or in some ways the over information that we can access right now. So these are literally my notes from that time. My teacher did lend me his copy of the Eddas. He lent me some various books about Viking history, Norse mythology. So I did have some good books to rely on. But one of the things he did was he gave me copies of the rune poems in Old Norse and Old Icelandic. He gave me a stupidly large dictionary, and he told me to come back when I'd translated them. Now, I don't speak any language other than the English. Perhaps I can ask for a coffee in French, but that's about it. So it was an eye-opener, translating from Old Norse and Old Icelandic to English. It made me realise the power of the translator. It made me realise that many words can be translated into many different words, and that the concept of the rune poem, if you are reading it in Old Norse or Old Icelandic and you understand these languages, has far more complexity than if you are reading them in a translation. That really opened my eyes. But I did it, and I enjoyed it. And so for all of the Younger Futhark, because it is the younger, and this I think is one of the reasons why I'm so obsessed with the Younger Futhark. There are two main reasons. The first reason is that we have the rune poems. These are glimpses, just the very subtlest of glimpses as to what the original meaning may have been. They're not authentic. They are written way past the time that the runes would have been using, but they may well have had an oral tradition first, and I definitely feel that it's closer than perhaps the 1920s, 30s, German folk texts that many of the elder Futhark are based on. So I love this. And I also love the fact that the sounds of the younger Futhark runes are in Old Norse. So these are literally my original notes. My teacher gave me no written notes at all. There are only 16 runes, so one of the things I did immediately was write them on stick-it notes and put them on my wall so that I could, and then I would write like the name and the sound underneath so I could begin to memorize them. It took me several weeks before I realized that my teacher was randomly mixing them up. That was annoying. But, you know, I learnt them. I learnt the deity associated, the shape of the rune, and the sound. So that's one of the things that I've done in my little booklet, is for each rune we have the name, but we also have the sound. In Old Norse, the sound for this rune is is. In Old Norse, the sound for this rune is nud. In Old Norse, we have hagel. And I found, would come to Kreft, we have to be careful with the word or the sound Kreft, because it actually translates to mean sore or ulcer or canker. And that's powerful because Loki is the deity of transformation. And if we look at his rune poem, you know, I've used the word ulcer, but canker is probably a more appropriate word. It's just that it's less used in modern times. Abode of mortification. This idea that we are all born, if we die of old age, that is, or illness, rather than if we die in an accident or through violence, we are all born with the agency of our death already in ourselves. I love that idea. So we have to be careful with the sound Kreft, because it does mean, you know, cancer or illness or canker. One of my favourites is the sound for this rune is laug, which means water. I mean, primal, pure, manifest water. Laug. I love it. I love that. So, you know, I was given books, but I was not given written notes. Some deities, for example, Vidar, it took long. Some deities, some runes, I melded into them immediately. Others, and Vidar was one of them, took a lot longer. So I would write my own notes. I would write my own quotes. But you'll notice as well that the quotes are direct quotes from mythology. I wasn't given any associations. I had to wrestle them for myself. I had to wrestle them from the translations. I had to wrestle them through shamanic journeys. I had to wrestle them by asking my teacher questions. And I can tell you that he answered almost every question with two sentences, one of which was, well, yes and no. And the other one would be something like, that's interesting. Now the root of the words, and then a very long diatribe with me trying to pick out the useful bits of information. I wasn't given the core information. I had to find it myself. And I think that was really valuable. So when I came to writing my rune booklet, I never intended to do this. It was my students. I'd come across these, I'd created these images. They were printed on A4 sheets of paper. And when I was teaching, I would have them out on the floor. And over time, because this has been developed over years, this is not something that has come quickly. Over time, students said they already found the images associated with the runes were helpful. I was very careful in picking the images because I did not want to define a rune. I don't think a rune can be defined. A rune is a gateway. It is a gateway to journey, it is a gateway to healing, it is a gateway to information, but it can't be defined. So I was very clear that when I loved this. It took me a long time to think of an image for Kreft, because how do you you show chaos? You know, how do you show that boom? But I quite liked that one. And there was it was almost the opposite with Odin, in the fact that there were a gazillion images I could have shared for Odin. The wolves, the ravens, Yggdrasil, that classic image of the hooded wanderer. For me, the magic of Odin is the moment when he hung himself upon Yggdrasil and appreciated the formula of the universe in the shape of the runes. And I think I was probably influenced by Vertigo, which is a bit of a favourite, but that idea of falling into something, he surrendered. And that's where I came up with the idea of the spiral. I was inspired by Fibonacci shapes and came to the spiral. So that's where the cards came from. And then basically students wanted a booklet to go with the cards. I'm not as harsh as my teacher is, though I'm very grateful for his teaching style. So I decided to try and compile a booklet to go. And so originally these were notes that were given to students. Now, many years ago, my first tarot students asked me to create a crib sheet to cover all the cards. I was really cross at them. They were so damn lazy. But I did do a crib sheet. It is still available on my website. If you go to Learn Tarot, if you go to free resources, you will find crib sheets. I think there's 2 currently that you can download. I was so annoyed that I was asked to do this that I left out the Fool. I still get people emailing me to say, do you realise you've left the Fool out? And it's like, yes, that's my act of rebellion. And with this booklet, I didn't want to define a rune. I wanted to make it clear that this is a starting point for your journey. It is in no way a finishing point or a definition. I have put in some very personal associations. Perhaps one of the most personal associations for me is under the rune poem for the rune fee, the deity Frey. I have stuck to modern convention of translating the last line of the old Icelandic poem as "and path of the serpent," but actually the old Icelandic is Ok grafside gata, which could be translated "and path of the burial shaman," or something of that nature. So I have deliberately left in this graph, the grave, the mound, and side that altered state of consciousness which many Norse practitioners use the lock or the chant to create. So maybe it's annoying, but I believe it is a gift that I deliberately kept myself to the 2 pages. For each of the runes, I wanted both rune poems, but I've been kind. I've translated them for you. And I did want some keywords, because I think sometimes, particularly if you're doing a rune reading, you don't want to read lists. You want keywords to inspire you. So what have I been doing since 1999 and 2025? I have been working. I have been teaching runes and Lochside for, I think it's about 11 years now. I work, although I'm well known as a tarot reader, I actually do an awful lot of shamanic healings. All of my shamanic healings are done using runic wisdom, even if I'm drumming or gonging. And I experience the runes. When I'm working with a client, I am experiencing different runic energies as part of their healing. And even when it comes to reading tarot, it is the runes that have informed my understanding of time, of fate, of psychic connection. The runes came first. You know, these much loved. And you can see Jord was another deity that I struggled to connect with. And so I tried to sort of pack it out and understand it. Whereas I think in general, Balder is quite an easy deity to get to know because his story is so clear in the myths. So that's where my information comes from. And the honest answer is I'm still learning. I'm very lucky. I have many good friends that are from the same tradition as me and who know far more about the historical side of rune law than I do. I am predominantly experiential. I experience the runes, and I'm grateful that that is mostly through my paid work now. But it is a passion since 1999. It has completely changed my life, and often people say, which books do you recommend? And that stumps me because I was not particularly book learned. Obviously, I'd like to recommend mine. I would definitely recommend Neil Gaiman's book on Norse mythologies. I think he's got a really personable and fun style. Of course, I'm going to suggest the Eddas. It's always worth going back to as core source as we can manage. And if you're just starting out about the runes, hey, let's say it. Let's mention the elephant in the room, Tolkien. Great place to start. Any of those Nordic fantasies, as long as you know that they're stories. As long as you appreciate that they're not fact, but they are enriching your understanding of, the period, the imagery, as long as you see them as fiction. And children's books about Norse mythology. The more that you can dive into Norse mythology, the more you're going to understand the runes and their meanings, because they can't be defined. They can only be understood.